Hello, this is Chris Ott, and this is part 6 of this series, What Meher Baba Really Taught. Um, this series, as I'm working on it, I'm realizing it's more for me than for an audience. It's more to for me to find my way through these things and eliminate things I don't need to say and find better ways to say things and so forth. Then it's more important for that than for that somebody be convinced of what I'm saying, because eventually that'll come. But this allows me to have a record of this process of figuring out how to explain a very big idea that's in this. And it's hard to explain it because there's some complicated issues. First of all, I did a lot of my own thinking on this subject that pertains to Baba's teaching that I've written a lot about, and I've never felt that I adequately described to others how it relates to what Baba actually taught. How it relates, I'm going to briefly say it, and then I'm going to go into some odd details. Okay, so as I was just talking about in the previous video, part 5, there's this problem in philosophy that's really ancient called the mind-body problem, or it might better be called the two-world problem. The idea that you have your private experience, which is really your real world, your world of experience, but all that is supposedly inside you. Your thoughts, all your sensations, and when you think about it, when you think about what is an apple is a bunch of sensations. The redness that you see, the coldness that you touch, the taste when you bite into it, the texture, all those are sensations. Now, the apple can't just be a bunch of sensations. So we postulate that these must be sensations caused by some object that you don't have any sensation of in you. So we assume that they're somehow outside of our world of experience. Because if they're in our world of experience, then it's just a bunch of sensations. Do you understand? There must be also a real apple. But we can't obviously perceive that real apple with our senses or by touch or anything, because any of those would be in us. So even what we mean by outside of us and inside of us, we're not even sure what that means. Because if I go, well, what I mean is like my sensations are inside my brain. Well, that's not quite right, because you can cut open a brain and go looking for your sensations and you'll never find them. So it's just sort of an expression. We more accurate neurologically to say maybe the sensations or some aspect of them occur in your brain or occur because of activity in your brain. But, even the study of the brain, when we go and we find brains, we open them up, we connect wires, and we look at them on an EKG, an EEG, electroencephalogram, and see the waves that the electricity in a brain produce and stuff like that. All that is in our experience. So is everything in me? Well, it can't be, because then that leads to an idea called solipsism. It's the idea that the whole universe is just in me. And when I go to the psychiatrist and tell him that I think the whole universe is in me, and he tells me, no, I exist too, I go, no, you're just in my head. So that's solipsism. It's kind of a funny disorder that no one ever really had, but it's in philosophy, we talk about it a lot, because it's a condition that theoretically that's what your philosophy is implying, that everything is in your head. And all attempts to find an alternative to this theoretical world that we can't see as the cause of the world we see, all attempts to find another way have led to solipsism. So that is the reason that we postulate that there's some kind of a world that we can't see, that's not in our experience, and therefore We can't possibly experience it. If you experienced it, it would be in you. Okay? So that's called the external world. It's the same thing as the physical world or the material world or the real world. So external, material, real, all this is the same, talking about a theoretical entity. Some unseen occult cause. Occult, in this case, in philosophy, meaning it's unperceived. It's hidden. Okay. Now, what if we take Baba's teaching, we see that there's the potential for another way to explain our experience other than through postulating this external world. And I already talked before about the problems of the external world. The problems are, well, if we can't see it, how do we know it exists? If we can't see it, how do we know it's like our experience? We can't compare the two. And then if we can't see it, how can we know how it produces our experience? I mean, we'd have to go look at how it's doing it, and we can't perceive it. So how in the world is it producing our experience? Nobody knows. That's the mind-body problem. It's sort of like having an answer to a cause, but the only parts of the answer that you have is a name for a thing, external world, and the claim that it's a cause. But there's no explanation of how it causes, and you can't observe it, and there's no proof that it exists. So it's very, very, very lame. And so I call it in my second book, I refer to those kinds of causes as nominal causes. That means in name only. So I come up with a name, and I can't perceive it, and I just, well, you can't see it, but I got a name for it, and it causes it. And then well, how does it cause it? Well, I don't know. I can't see it, so I don't know. See, that's just a name. You have the name for the cause. Now, matter is like this, actually. Most people think matter is something that they deal with in science. No. Matter is a theoretical entity that is assumed in science, that matter is the cause of our observations. But no one's ever found any matter because matter is part of the external world, or world external of your experience. That's the sense in which it's external. It's not outside your head. This is outside my head, but it's still part of my internal experience. And this little movie right now is part of your internal experience. If you didn't follow all that, you will, because I'm gonna go. I got a new thing I'm gonna do today. Now, Baba doesn't use another world to explain our experience. Baba says that has a process of evolution of consciousness, or evolution of the phenomenal world, the world of our experience. And this is it's only an apparent world. It only appears because of the sanskars that produce the appearance of, which I'll get. To understand that, you have to go to Baba's own books. But his process is a process of evolving sanskars that produce the phenomenal world for all of us. And they don't really happen in something or outside something. You just drop all that language. It's just your experience is the world. But since it's only an appearance, it's technically an illusion, or in a sense, a dream. And this is the sense in which Baba is literally saying the world is a dream. It's not some magical Hindu idea. It's not just saying Maya, which if used that way is just a nominal cause. What's causing this illusion? Maya. Well, then it's just a nominal cause. How does it do it? Oh, I don't know. Well, Baba explains how it does it. It's a psychological process over a long period of time, which produced the universe. That's an evolution of what I call an evolution of perception. And and this is how the world gets created. So normally we say God created the world. But Baba says, who said God created the world? You created it in your own imagination, because the sanskars are what produced the world. And not just yours, but the whole world. And we'll get into that. And Baba is able to account for certain aspects of phenomenal experience that the external world was invented to try to account for. He is able to account for those things, but that takes some getting into. And it's in my second book, so you could go read it. And my referring to my own books is important because although it's in Baba, he doesn't work it out how it could produce a world. He does lay out what is producing the world, but not how that could be possible. He doesn't give a plausible theory. He's just telling you how it is. So what I did from about the year 2000 till about 2004 when my first book came out, I laid it out. I actually, with my thesis advisor, we talked about it and I laid it out. I wrote it out as 10 pages, and that's when he said, well, this should be developed, because he saw that it actually worked. It's a plausible way to explain the universe without an external world, which is totally problematic, because what's it outside of anyway? It's kind of a mixed up idea, but it was something, but it never really worked. And that's quite gone into in my second book, starting with Aristotle and Plato. So, how they tried to deal with this external world. By the way, Aristotle completely would have agreed. He would have said, yes, your experience is an illusion. It's what he called I can't remember the word. Okay, it's okay. I'll just skip it. Phantasms. This experience of this cup is a phantasm. The real cup's got to be outside it and sort of like it, but it's not it. So he had this division too. So did Plato, by the way. That's the notion of the cave is actually about that. Okay, so now let's continue. I want to say some stuff that will sound preposterous. Not because it's a good idea to believe things that are preposterous. Most things that are preposterous, I frankly don't believe. That something seems preposterous to me is a reason to doubt it, not to believe it. But still, I'm going to tell you something preposterous that's true. It'll sound preposterous. And the reason is it occurred to me this morning, as I was getting ready to start this discussion, that, I'm always wanting to sound smart, and I'm always wanting to sound reasonable, and the things that I say plausible. So, I forgot. Well, it's okay. I left the little thing out earlier. It's all right. I'll get to it eventually. And this is because, it hurts my ego when people think poorly of me, or think I'm ridiculous, or roll their eyes, and things like that. So I've always been careful not to offend people's, assumptions too much. I don't tell them everything I think because I'm kind of scared what they might say. But then I noticed that some of the most famous people in the world, they say preposterous things all the time. And people listen to them, and they don't listen to me. And one of my goals is for people to finally, at some point, even if it's not in my lifetime, although it'd be nice if it was in my lifetime, if they listen to me and they heard what I'm saying. So I thought, well, maybe I should just tell them, hey, what I'm about to tell you is going to sound preposterous. Now, the definition of the word preposterous, I looked it up because I don't usually use this word. It means contrary to reason or common sense, utterly absurd or ridiculous. A preposterous suggestion. So, I'm going to say some things that sound preposterous. But they're actually facts. And there's a thing called the Overton window. And that's the amount of things that suddenly seem less preposterous to us. That they seem plausible and possible. So right now, the things I'm going to say are outside the Overton window. But my hope is that over time, the Overton window will expand to include what I'm saying is much less preposterous and much more plausible. And this has already happened to a large extent because there's so many things in the culture like the holographic universe idea, which is false, but it still opens your mind. And it comes from Star Trek and and from video games. And video games have helped people, and also quantum, which is nonsense. Quantum mechanics is just absolutely silly. It's just nominal causes and fantasies. They're just occult causes. But you'll see what I mean in a moment. But however, it's opened the Overton window. People are open to the idea that the world is not real. Now, if I was to say what two of the most important teachings that Meher Baba gave, they were kind of at the top of kind of a pyramid, well, the very top would be there's only God. Okay? If anything that exists is God, anything that's not God does not exist. It's an illusion. It appears to exist, but it doesn't really exist. Only God exists. Which seems strange. And Baba talks about the paradox of that. That which seems unreal and unseen is actually the real. That which seems so obvious and seen, that's not real. So Baba says, and so he has two books. The Nothing and the Everything, and the Everything and the Nothing. It's kind of like a version of an old title that was common in the 19th century on appearance and reality. Okay. So God is the real everything. And this everything that we experience, all that are phenomena that we experience, is the real nothing. That's Baba's teaching. But it's richer than that. But that basically is it. So only God exists. And then next is the universe and all else is an illusion. That's actually a quote by Baba. Baba says, oh, God alone exists, all else is an illusion. You look it up. He said it in various wordings many, many times. So some people will be very skeptical of the claim that the world is an illusion. Because they'll go, well, it's just common sense. And then they'll go, well, what evidence do you have that it's real? And they'll go, well, I can feel it. And so what are they pointing to? They're pointing to sensations. And where are sensations? According to science, not me, science, they're in your head, in your brain, happening somehow because of some firing of some synapses, because of some electricity and some electrolytes and neurons operating and proteins. And somehow the sensation of this cup occurs in there. So they say that's an illusion. So that you're not really getting anywhere by going, yeah, but then when I tap on the table, it's hard. Well, there are laws of physics, and they're the laws that govern perception. And when you put your hand on against the table, all those atoms have a field, and they don't press together beyond a certain point, and then it pushes back. Okay, when you lift, there's gravity, and that's another law. So there's this weight, and these are all the evidence that it's real, but they're just evidence that there is experience, which is in you, and then these laws that govern this stuff, and where they are, well, I have an answer to that, but science doesn't. What are the laws? Where did they come from? How did they evolve? Where are they? Nobody knows. What are they made of? Nothing. Nothing. They don't even ask those questions, because that would be the ruination of science to ask those questions. So, although Baba pointed the direction, the world is an evolution of consciousness and experience, and the building block is the sanskara, which is a psychological thing. Then the universe is psychogenic. He makes that clear. He even uses the word psychogenic, but however, that means from a psychic origin, not from like parts and particles, like of matter somewhere, because that's just a theory. While he makes that very clear, he does not flesh out some theory to explain how it is that, cups are heavy. But that's what I did. And I did it over, really, I'm still working on it. It's still improving. So I spent the last 20 years doing that. And that's my contribution to Mayor Baba's work, really, is that I wrote a plausible theory. And then in my second book, I actually recognized, while writing the book, and I wrote it in the book, that it occurred to me as I was going through the stages of the evolution that produced the world out of these sanskaras, or kind of lenses of how you perceive, that not only is this plausible, but it's logically necessary. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is very simply, there's an a priori fact that a thing can't exist before the necessary conditions for its existence. And so if you take the world as it is, and you go back to the necessary conditions for that, and the necessary conditions for that, and the necessary conditions for that, you'll go right back to where Baba says things are. Just basically God as infinite intelligence. Because infinite intelligence is the primary necessary condition for an evolution of perception. Because perception doesn't mean anything if there's not intelligence. Okay, so that's when I think Baba is saying God is. And in fact, in his book, he didn't name the book. He left notebooks, which have been called the Intelligence Notebooks. And I'll link to them in my book, where you can download a PDF of them. And in there, he, what was it? Where was I? Whatever. I'll remember when I'm going over this and editing it. But I'll try to write something in if I can clarify. But I have to move on. All right. Now, what I wanted to explain is that if I was going to title this new next video, which I'll actually start I'll stop and then do a second part, which will be part 7. An easy number to remember. In part 7, I'm going to go over something that people don't really understand and don't know about. It's not taught. Is that some things that we take for granted, that we think are common sense, that we think would be preposterous to doubt, don't exist. And I mean that literally, and I don't mean that like I'm not doing a semantical trick or something like that, or some kind of, it's not a game. You'll recognize, wow, it never existed at all. It wasn't not really a thing. It was a lie. It was a hoax. It was just made up, or it was a mistake. It was a theoretical thing, but it was wrong. Okay? And I'm going to go over 2 of them in part 7. And the first one is from its recent breakthrough in science. And I'll suggest some others, but there's one that I can solidly explain and point you straight to the source of the science, the scientists that are working on this. And then I'm going to explain how this applies to Baba's basic claim that the physical world, and even the world of energy and the world of thought and everything that's phenomenal, doesn't really exist. It was all a mistake. Because it was really this external world thing doesn't really exist. But all the things that were explained, that we were trying to explain by way of positing this external world, Baba does explain by way of the sanskaras. In a much more elegant way than, well, no, I mean the external world can't explain the world. In principle, because it can't be perceived. So it doesn't even belong to the world of science. It just belongs to the world of make-believe. And it doesn't have any real mechanics to it. We're waiting to... Well, you'll never be able to perceive it, because whatever you perceive is within your perception, which is in you. Okay. I'm going to see you in part 7. I'm not going to change my clothes or lighting or anything, but I'll probably change the background. And I probably have some slides with this. Um, so, and I'm going to call the part 7 things that don't exist. All right? I'll see you on the other side because I'm making a point of that there are things that don't exist. All right.